Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, grannies and gators, patriots, prisoners, and hostages, too. It is Wednesday, October 30th. Thank you for finding some time to join us here again. If you are new here, we are a community effort. So we depend on you guys to help us get this message out there. So thank you for giving this a thumbs up or a heart wherever you're watching this from, giving a subscription, and giving this a share. And I say that we're a community because we are living this shit show together real time, and this is kind of a symbiotic relationship. You guys keep me going, and I keep trying to sort this stupidity from the serious. And tonight, because we're going to have some dark subjects to cover, I thought I would start with a little bit of levity, folks, on the, since Halloween is coming up tomorrow, a little bit of a look back to our illustrious, not so honorable, most prolific liar in chief actor ever, the ultimate edition. So this meme just made me crack when I saw this today, and I think most everybody has kind of seen one of these: Justin the Islamist, the Native American, the cowboy Westerner, the Sikh, the Scot, the pirate, the equestrian, the scientist, the Hindu, the black square, the Chinese, Jewish, Arab, French musketeer, soldier, blue collar worker, firefighter, kayaker, feminist, zoologist, paraplegic, Ukrainian, Sherlock Holmes, cricket player, celebrity, boxer, academic, Star Wars rebel, heterosexual, politician. So cheers to Mr. Trudeau in for Halloween coming up tomorrow. I can't wait to see what kind of a costume he will have for us all tomorrow. So how's that for opening the door with a little bit of a joke, folks? So we're gonna be covering a kind of a dark subject, and we're gonna be taking a look across the whirlwind of things. And let me get started here, as always, of course, with a reminder to get plugged in on Substack. That is where all of the links, the graphs, the charts, the pictures, the documents, all of the odds and ends go to after a show. And some folks were asking yesterday, well, they don't really understand Substack. So I'm just going to take a couple of seconds here, simply because while we have the opportunity to get the message out, I'll tell you what, guys, this last week has been a shit show from the tech and platform sides. And by that, I mean, what were the hoops and garbage we're having to jump through to continue keeping the message going, has been off the hook, as we kind of expected. If you're in this space with probably the most polarizing election in human history coming up in just a few more days, the shenanigans are ramping up and jacking up all across the board. So thank you if you did manage to find your way here. Just going to take a couple of seconds for those folks that aren't familiar on with Substack. It's free subscription. You'll get a prompt to ask if you want to choose to donate. If you do, it's like $8 a month. It's not mandatory. There's no paywall. And this is kind of the anchor point of the video world meeting the written world, meeting the resource library section as well. So there's, you can go, you can subscribe, you can like the posts, you can comment and engage on them, you can share them, you can share links, you can get transcripts from some of them. There's all kinds of resources there. You can get plugged into whatever app it is that you may want to listen to this on a podcast format. So we're still able to get out there on places where I can't even watch and monitor. And you'll find recommendations to some of the other platforms that we do recommend as trustworthy sites. But down at the bottom is what I wanted to get to. People don't know where we're streaming to, so this is where it's listed. So I just thought I'd bring this up to show everybody. whatsupcanada.org is having a little issue. So until I get that sorted out, don't go to whatsupcanada.org. again. Surprise, surprise, surprise. See what I mean? About the insanity and shenanigans. LGM.news is still working, streams there every night. Rumble, of course, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, is getting better as far as for Canadians. It's a different set of rules for Canadians on X than it is for the US. But it's getting a little bit better. You can plug into our podcast on Spotify as well. Wimkin is back up tonight. Don't know why. I'll have to talk with Jason about that, see what was going on. I'm sure he's been under all kinds of attack as well. Wimkin, if you don't know it, folks, is a US based platform built by Jason Shepard, one of us. And he's been, all the way to the Supreme Court fighting several times. They don't keep or store or sell your information or data to any of the Silicon Valley swamp zombies. Liberty. We're on Liberty, Telegram, Instagram, Facebook, sometimes YouTube, not these days, and Odyssey. Odyssey kind of brought that back up, as reinforcements. So there's all kinds of places where you can get plugged into What's Up Canada. So we're going to start with kind of a funny little segue into the first story before we get into the meat and the potatoes of tonight's show. I'm probably not going to keep you 2.5 hours like I did last night, but we've still got a lot to get into. So from Tom Quiggin today, I saw this post, and it's like, the face palm. Dope. The Libers have gone and done it again. So a woman is now defined as your partner with eggs, according to the medical community. You've been trying to conceive for 12 months with regular unprotected intercourse, and the partner with eggs is less than 35 years old. 85% of people will conceive within the first year of trying. So, uh, the first thing that's got to come to your mind is, obviously the woke virus has struck this uh, quote unquote doctor. So we take that next step. Well, okay, must be a liberal. I had this video that I wanted to share with you guys for a little while. Kind of, I know, Susie Q, right? Partner with eggs. That's where we're at now. Partner with eggs. This is why you guys come to this show, right? You're not going to see this shit anywhere else, and you cannot even make it up, but you'll find it here on What's Up Canada. So I thought I would take a few minutes here, share this video with you guys and see if you agree in how we perceive conservatism versus liberalism. This is, kind of a multi-purpose fit US and Canada, and see if you guys or anybody still recognizes this party definition that we operate from in our society, in our thinking. That is the word that we attach to, etc. Right? So these words are fundamentally ingrained with us, and I think it's kind of necessary when we can't figure out the difference between uh, women and partner with eggs, to maybe we better revisit what is a conservative versus a liberal.
First up, we have the conservatives. Picture them as the guardians of tradition, the keepers of order, and the champions of personal responsibility. They hold these values close to their hearts and believe they are essential for a well-functioning society. They're like the friend who always orders the same meal at their favorite restaurant because, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This consistency brings comfort and reliability. Conservatives value stability, predictability, and maintaining things the way they are, or even reverting to a better time. They believe that change should be gradual and well considered. They believe in limited government intervention in both the economy and people's lives. Think of them as the referees of the game, ensuring everyone plays by the rules, but not telling the players how to score. They set the stage for fair play without micromanaging. They emphasize individual freedom, but with a strong emphasis on personal accountability. Each person is responsible for their own actions and outcomes. You're free to succeed or fail, but don't expect handouts. They believe that hard work and determination are the keys to success. They admire self-reliance and the ability to overcome obstacles through personal effort. The pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality is central to their belief system. In a nutshell, conservatives believe in preserving the best of the past while cautiously navigating toward the future. They strive to balance respect for tradition with the need for progress, ensuring that changes are not only beneficial, but also sustainable.
Yeah,
Now,
well, that's going
let's
to be a
mosey on over to the
problem
liberal
with
lounge,
this group
where
now,
change is
isn't it?
embraced, equality is championed, and social justice is the lifeblood of the party. Here, the spirit of progress is palpable, and the air is filled with the energy of those who believe in a better tomorrow. Liberals are like that friend who's always up for trying the newest restaurant, even if it means standing in line for an hour. They are persistent and patient, knowing that real change takes time and effort. They're all about progress, pushing for a more inclusive and equitable society. This means advocating for policies that ensure everyone, regardless of their background, has a fair chance. They believe in using government as a tool to address social ills and level the playing field. By implementing social programs and reforms, they aim to create a society where everyone can thrive. Think of them as the coaches, constantly strategizing and adjusting the game plan to ensure everyone has a fair shot at winning. They work tirelessly behind the scenes, crafting policies and initiatives that promote fairness and justice. Liberals advocate for social programs, environmental protection, and sustainable developments. They understand that a healthy planet is crucial for a just society and individual rights, particularly for marginalized groups. They stand up for those whose voices are often unheard, fighting for equality and justice. They believe in a safety net for the less fortunate, ensuring that no one is left behind. Through community support and social services, they aim to uplift those in need and strive for a world where everyone has equal opportunities, regardless of their background.
Incorrect. They want equal outcome. Equality of outcome is what the modern liberals want. It's hard to keep my mouth listening to this, but I also think it's important to understand exactly how they wipe this stuff into people's consciousness. It's he kind of had the conservative part fair, but now he's definitely embellishing on the virtue signal of the left.
Education, healthcare,
This is what
and
we're dealing with.
economic opportunities are seen as fundamental rights. In a nutshell, liberals are all about breaking down barriers and creating a more just and equitable future for everyone. They envision a world where diversity is celebrated and everyone has the chance to succeed. Their vision is one of unity, where every individual is valued and respected, and where the principles of equality and justice guide every action and policy. Now, let's talk demographics. You've probably heard of red states and blue states, right? Well, it's not just a fashion statement. It reflects where conservatives and liberals tend to cluster. Generally speaking, you'll find more conservatives in rural areas and the South. Wide open spaces, strong religious values, and a deep connection to tradition. Liberals, on the other hand,
And this is kind of why I wanted to share this with you guys, because this is genuinely how they see themselves. They see themselves as the moral superior in this battle of left versus right. And then when you add into what they're being filled in the other ear about how evil we are,
tend to flock to urban areas and the coasts, like bustling cities, diverse populations, and a constant buzz of new ideas. Of course, this is a vast oversimplification, and you'll find plenty of liberals in rural Texas and conservatives in downtown San Francisco. But understanding these general trends helps explain why certain policies resonate in some areas more than others. These two ideologies are fighting a moral match, equipped with different playbooks, but more often than not, fighting for the same or similar goals. So let's talk about morality, folks. Both conservatives and liberals care deeply about doing what's right, but often from different angles. Conservatives tend to emphasize individual responsibility and traditional moral codes, often rooted in religious beliefs. Think of it as a rule book passed down through generations, guiding their sense of right and wrong. Liberals, on the other hand, often prioritize empathy.
I gotta pause this for a second, guys, and make a point here. Where right here, um, they're talking about religious beliefs, and here they're portraying a liberal versus a conservative, and this is not based on religious beliefs. So, yeah, it's kind of flipping the script there a little bit, aren't they?
On the other hand, often prioritize empathy, compassion, and a more fluid approach to morality, adjusting belief systems and reshaping cultural norms. They're more likely to question traditional norms and advocate for change based on evolving social values. It's like they're constantly updating their moral software to adapt to the changing world. Despite their differences, both sides genuinely believe their values are better for society. It's just a matter of perspective, like arguing whether pineapple belongs on pizza. For the record, it totally does. Or does it? It does. I've made the call. Are we all after the same destination, but using different compasses? To understand the great conservative-liberal debate, you need to understand the compass guiding their every move. Conservatives are all about limited government, individual liberty, free markets, and a strong sense of national security. Think of it as a sturdy, reliable compass, pointing them towards tradition and self-reliance.
Why is this
Liberals,
crazy?
On the other hand,
To
are
them?
guided by social justice, equality, government intervention where they see it's needed, in a more inclusive society. Their compass is constantly recalibrating, adjusting to the changing social landscape and seeking.
Huge point there. Huge point. Their compass is continuously reevaluating. So there is this ever moving set of goalposts, right? And he's right on this point. This is the difference. We operate within rules and structure and law and order. And they want to flip that around to whatever's convenient for them in their emotional state, however they are experiencing it. And this is kind of one of the fundamental flaws of democracy, because it's ultimately democracy is ruled by the mob, right? So whoever is the most emotionally outspoken, loudest, longest, squeakiest wheel, that's who government will work with. And politics will always run downstream of culture. So long as we have this as the guiding squeaky noise of demand and discontent to our political system, this is where they will continuously flip their adjustable moral compass and try to demonize anything that doesn't automatically fall into alignment with them, right? So this is kind of a a good video to get some lessons out of and uses some comparisons, right?
The best path toward a fairer future. These core principles are the bedrock of their beliefs, shaping their views on everything from healthcare to education to climate change. Knowing the differences between their sets of principles is key to understanding the political stances each group holds. When conservatives and liberals butt heads, worlds collide. Now, let's be honest, folks. Conservatives and liberals don't always see eye to eye. In fact, they often clash like a mosh pit at a heavy metal concert. Whether it's healthcare, gun control, or the best way to make a grilled cheese sandwich, these two groups rarely agree on the best way forward. Conservatives might argue for individual responsibility and free market solutions, while liberals might advocate for government intervention and social safety nets. It's like they're speaking different languages, each convinced their way is the only way. But hey, that's democracy, baby. It's messy, it's loud, and it often feels like herding cats. But it's also a beautiful system that allows for diverse viewpoints and constant debate. Just remember to breathe, folks. It's all part of the process.
Unless you get too far to one side and you end up with censorship, propaganda, and silencing becoming the new normal as required by only one side of the public square, right? So this is where we've already tipped past the point of a balance in our in democracy. So that's a problem. That's a problem, and they're far better. They've been far better organized with the hive mentality than we have been. So.
What makes a conservative or a liberal tick? Ever wonder what makes conservatives and liberals attach themselves to their ideology? Well, psychologists have some theories. Some research suggests that conservatives tend to have a higher need for order and structure, while liberals are more comfortable with ambiguity and change. It's like the difference between preferring a perfectly organized spice rack and embracing the chaotic beauty of a junk drawer. Other studies suggest that conservatives are more sensitive to threats and danger, while liberals are more open to new experiences and diversity. It's like the difference between wanting to stay in your comfort zone and venturing out to explore uncharted territory. Of course, these are just generalizations, and individual personalities are far more complex.
Govern me harder,
But understanding
Daddy.
these underlying psychological tendencies can shed light on why people gravitate towards certain political ideologies. It's time for the big thinkers, the philosophers, to chime in. Let's get philosophical, shall we? The battle between conservatism and liberalism is nothing new. It's been raging for centuries, with philosophers weighing in on both sides. Thinkers like Edmund Burke, the father of modern conservatism, emphasized tradition, order, and the importance of gradual change. On the other hand, liberal philosophers like John Locke, John Stuart Mill championed individual rights, limited government, and the pursuit of happiness. Their ideas continue to shape the political landscape today, influencing how we think about government, society, and the role of the individual. So the next time you find yourself in a heated political debate, remember that you're engaging in a philosophical tradition dating back centuries. Just try not to throw any books at your opponent. Well, folks, there you have it. A whirlwind.
Hey, I thought that was an interesting kind of how to dissect some of the issues that we're dealing with, and and at the same time, take a look at what even some of the liberals think about their party. Are they even still liberals? So if they're not, then we have to start figuring out new ways to deal with this gyrating moral and societal compass that they seem to have. So
donate and subscribe. Andrew Perez is a political strategist, and he's a liberal. And he joins me now. I want to put the question to you, Andrew, that Trudeau describes himself as a progressive. And many people will argue that he has distinctly non-liberal policies, and that millions of people who have voted liberal, who consider themselves liberal, will not vote for him because he has left them behind. Do you think this government, this federal government, is a liberal government?
I mean, I still think it's a liberal government. I think
in more than name?
Well, I think parties evolve. I think what I've been critical of is that the Liberal Party historically, up until about 10 or 15 years ago, was a brokerage party. And there were elements of that party which were certainly on the progressive end, but there were also centrist and business factions within that party. And you saw in the cabinet of Chrétien, you had people like John Manley and Paul Martin and Lloyd Axworthy and Alan Rock and Sheila Copps. And they were able to balance.
And in Trudeau won. There were, the same thing, business people, solid people and it was a broad spectrum. I know from cabinet meetings that there'd be left, right, and center, and they all be discussing with a common goal. We don't seem to have that.
So that's what we've lost. And you could even argue that in the first Justin Trudeau term, we had a bit of that with Bill Morneau and Scott Bryson, Jim Carr, Ralph Goodale.
The transitional ones.
Yes,
they're all sailing.
And I think you can argue that you've seen that reflected in the public policy decisions of this government that have increasingly lurked to the left, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
The spending has never been reined in. And I'm actually pleased that the Liberals were the only party in Parliament to vote against a $16 billion boost to OAS payments because the money isn't there. And if we're going to spend more money, we need to spend it on building more housing and helping young people.
And transportation.
Infrastructure.
We are infrastructure. We are one of the worst countries in the world now as far as railroads. We used to be one of the best.
And the irony of it is I think that the progressive vision that Trudeau had was part of it was to solidify young Canadians under 35.
Right.
Now,
and they voted for him.
They did at least once or twice. Now young Canadians are stampeding over to the Conservatives, and the Liberals are double-digit point behind the Conservatives among the under 35 demographic.
So I put it to you again, Andrew. Is that because this is not a traditional Liberal government that appeals to the average working Canadian?
Well, in a sense, and as I've said on social media, if you are an able-bodied, healthy 30-year-old living in your mom and dad's basement, national childcare, pharmacare, dental care don't mean a whole lot to you. They're not going to improve your day-to-day life. You need a job. You need to get into the housing market. What is this government doing? What is this government doing to help those people?
For another story. Andrew, thank you very much.
Okay, so now the reason why I wanted to play this little clip, and I'm going to go back here to some of the comments to kind of addresses that. We literally, what this guy did was explained to us how the traditional Liberal, as we saw described in that video just a moment ago, how that traditional Liberal has been tossed, turfed, and replaced with this new homogenous DEI compliant, higher appointed, anointed Liberal of the globalist variety, not the national variety, right? So even the Liberals themselves, and this is where I think we're seeing it play out in this heated point of time that we're in right now, that the people, even their own side, is coming apart at the seams. And this is why it's always in our best interest to not hate the Liberals, but hate what they believe. Because as he said, especially with the young people are flipping, turning, changing their mind, and they want to come back to the conservative side of things, but they're not going to come back to us if we were the one that treated them like garbage, right? So this is why I always say our ears are our best weapons, and wait for them to turn. Don't hate the Liberals, hate what they believe, and work with those that are, when they have their light bulb come on, be there to educate them and give them what they need to move forward once they've had that sense of discovery, which is our greatest tool. And so at this point now, we're going to transition from the mental and perspective or peek at the Liberal side of the discussion to more the political scape. And I've actually got two clips from Brian Lilly that I'm going to use tonight, but he says this really well here. And I want to talk about how irrelevant this government is and how dangerous that is as we get into a clip from Neil Oliver a little bit coming up here in just a wee bit.
Justin Trudeau has made the House of Commons completely irrelevant to Canadians. Hi, I'm Brian Lilly, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. Lest you think I'm being too harsh on the Trudeau government
Not at all.
and saying that they've made the House of Commons irrelevant, consider this. Since October 2nd, the House of Commons has been debating one thing and one thing only: whether the privilege of MPs was breached when the government refused to hand over documents in the Green Slush Fund scandal. That's it. Yes, there's been question period. Yes, committees are still going on, but no government business has moved. In fact, the government still has not passed its Ways and Means motion to implement the capital gains tax changes that took effect last June. That's how dysfunctional Parliament is. The government is not able to move any business. This, after a ruling from the Speaker, the privilege was breached. So they're going to debate this. And they've been doing it since the 2nd of October over the Green Slush Fund documents. This is a billion-dollar slush fund. There's more than 40 million that is believed to have been spent inappropriately. There's tens of millions more in money that went to companies connected to either board members or employees at the Green Slush Fund. The thing was so bad that after a damning Auditor General's report last June, the Trudeau Liberals shut it down. They said, this thing's over. We're getting rid of it. They put all of their money and responsibilities with the National Research Council, and they shut it down. And now, after the House of Commons said, okay, we want more information, as is their right. That is a right of Parliament to demand the production of papers. They said, we want more information, hand over all the documents related to this. The government said no. The Speaker told them they had to, or they'd be in breach. They said no. They've handed over some documents, but many of them are redacted, some of them not surrendered at all. So we're in a standoff. Parliament's doing nothing. Justin Trudeau, meanwhile, he's surviving his coup attempts. He's surviving the attempts by people within his own party to overthrow him. But the actual business of government has ground to a halt. And Canadians aren't noticing because under Trudeau, Parliament has become irrelevant. They don't even have much of a legislative agenda to try and push through. It's all gimmicks, like trying to say that they're going to take away charitable status from any group that says something they disagree with on abortion. That's the level of debate that we're at with the Trudeau Liberals right now. Desperation mode. And Parliament is doing nothing. The Bloc Québécois says they're ready to bring down the Trudeau Liberals, but the NDP's not. And all three opposition parties are needed to defeat them. So nothing's going to change unless the government prorogues or we somehow end up in an election. It's all politics all the time, nothing being done for you because Justin Trudeau doesn't want you to find out the truth about his latest scandal. Let me know.
100%, Brian. I can't disagree with that whatsoever. And this is like putting the opportunity where the representatives of the people have the opportunity to speak is basically been frozen, paralyzed. And meanwhile, the Senate marches on. The Senate marches on, where, and this is all part of the stalling and delay tactics. I think that Trudeau is engaging in every dirty, illicit tactic and trick in the book to keep the insanity train running off the cliff until he gets these fundamental bills in. That being Bill C-293, Bill 63. This other 15, like there is just an absurd number of control measures that they're really trying to force through, and that might be the one reason that he may prorogue too, because I think that carries on as well. I'm not sure, but this is absolute insanity meant to keep us from being focused 100% while we're watching the bread and circus shit show carry on. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that from the simple investor. And we're going to be tying a few things into why this is insanity before we get into the genocide discussion.
Hey there. Welcome to the Simple Podcast. I'm Todd C. Slater, the Simple Investor. You know, it's interesting when we take a look at politics, you know, what are they good for? You know, there was a song back in the 80s and a band said, what is war good for? And it's absolutely nothing. You know, I kind of feel that way about politicians nowadays. You know, the amount of rhetoric that's been floating around lately, the fact that, you know, Trudeau's got, you know, a huge part of his caucus sitting there saying step down, and, you know, he kind of laughed it off and basically said, no, you guys are stuck with me at least till the election. You know, it's interesting how narratives change. And one of the things recently that the federal government had done was they actually got on the bandwagon of housing. Now, you know, I like to think that I'm a real estate expert. I've been in the field for over 30 years. And, you know, both from building renovations, being a landlord, all aspects of it, selling the stuff. I mean, you know, when we talk about real estate, it's one of those areas that we keep saying the government needs to stay the F out of it. You know, when they get involved in real estate, you know, they really screw it up. It doesn't matter if we're talking about lending. It doesn't matter if we're talking about building permits. You know, whatever narrative they're trying to shift, it really does not benefit real estate. And, you know, about 14 months ago, the federal government came out and said, look, this isn't something we're involved in, is housing. And then all of a sudden, the huge uproar by Canadians, and it's, you know, uproar is probably what is best served as just like a little murmur. You know, Canadians aren't really the people that turn around unless they're truckers and they make their protest, which was an amazing event for Canadians. You know, absolutely incredible show of voice. But nowadays, when we talk about politicians, I mean, you know, we've got politicians that are just having their way with us, and, you know, basically you're just being bent over and you have to take it. So when they turned around and they said nothing about, you know, they didn't want anything to do with housing, and then all of a sudden let's talk about election and let's talk about, you know, let's shift the narrative. So Trudeau decides to all of a sudden get this hard on to start talking about real estate over the last 12 months. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's got a cape flying, and it certainly isn't the Canadian flag. I don't know what flag he wears, but it's not Canadian. And so all of a sudden, he becomes the big guy that's going to come out and take care of Canadians, take care of the housing crisis. Well, you caused the housing crisis. I mean, and then all of a sudden, last week you turn around and flat out and come out and say, hey, we're going to have less people immigrate into Canada. How's that going to work for you? You know what? You left the borders wide open. It doesn't matter. You know what? That horse has already sailed out of the barn. So you got too many people in. Yes, we have a housing problem. And now this week, what do? I mean, man, is there a side of the coin you can actually stay on? Let's see what this asshat has to say.
We're now in a phase where we're launching the most aggressive home building strategy in this country since World War II, since the end of World War II, where whether it's with the catalog, whether it's putting money in the pockets of municipalities so they can cut red tape, increase densification, be more ambitious, not just about building homes, but about the way and the system in which we build homes.
Okay. Oh man, this guy is such a clown. When he comes out and he uses the word catalog, yeah, because it's like ordering from the Sears catalog years ago. Hey, I'll take a set of pants and why don't you throw a house into it? Give me a break, you clown. Okay. When the best building was done? It was done in the 50s and 60s. And it was the new immigrants that came into Canada. It was the people that were willing to put the brick and mortar in the ground and make it happen. And the shit that you've allowed into this country over the last few years isn't going to build the housing. Now, of course, you come out and say, hey, look, you know what? We're empowering municipalities to deal with the red tape. Are you really? Because I got news for you. The municipalities aren't doing that great. And yes, some of them need to be held accountable. If you don't build it, you shouldn't get the money. But of course, you want to sit there and paint this rosy picture that you're going to come up with some fictitious number out of nowhere and say, this is our plan. Well, that's great, buddy. But you haven't been able to actually implement a plan since you started. And really, what do we have to count on other than, a bunch more of these interviews? Well, you know what? I get kind of sick and tired of listening to this guy talk. He is a waste of oxygen. We shouldn't even listen to him. One of the things is I'd love to hear your comments on stuff like this because it's really important. Don't forget to subscribe. But, as I always wrap it up, and I do bring it back to real estate a lot because I am a believer in it, and I believe every Canadian should own it. I believe every Canadian should help the next generation. I believe that we should all take those steps to make Canadians stronger financially and make it a little bit better. But this guy doesn't know what the Canadian flag looks like. He's been shitting on it for years, and you know what? It's not going to get any better. But if you want, make sure you tune in every single week. I'm going to keep you up to date on some of my thoughts about people like this and what it.
I loved what he said, and he exactly, Christina, he said it out loud. The people that we used to bring in here helped build this country. They were an asset to it. They were good for our communities. They came here to live the Canadian dream. They came to support their country they intended to live in. The people that they're bringing now don't give two shits. They ain't going to build nothing. All they are going to do is be continuous parasites. So I got to give this guy mad props for saying it out loud, right? So yeah, awesome stuff. And what the Liberals have planned for us, that's not a rosy outlook, right? All right, so next up, how do we know that this is, they really don't give two shits? Well, this is a short little clip from a segment with Trudeau's former parliamentary secretary who sat down with Jordan Peterson and spilled the beans. So I think it's kind of a little bit of icing on the cake, the sparklers on the cake, maybe for the Trudeau shit show.
Has driven me into the PhD work that I'm doing right now on motivated cognition and understanding what motivates people, their self-appraisal, their self-enhancement, their self-verification. It was really in that moment seeing that everything that needed to align for Justin Trudeau at that moment needed to feed into his feelings or his motivation on self, what he felt about himself. And I came in and within that first 15 minutes of a meeting said, no, I'm not just going to arbitrarily fall into what you deem to be your methodology around your self-enhancement. That is not my role. My role is to represent the people of Ripley. My role is to make sure that we execute a mandate. And I didn't know that at the time, but it really spoke to the fact.
Didn't know what?
I didn't know at the time that probably that wasn't the best move to make, because I assumed that as his parliamentary secretary, as his right-hand person, that he would have wanted someone who was going to be honest. And I don't think that's what he wanted. He wanted someone to confirm a bias that he felt about himself, or a lack of self-esteem that he felt about himself, by saying, yes, I trust your judgment, Justin. I don't know you, but I'm going to say, yes, I trust you. I can play that game. I didn't want to. Says Drew.
I think that was so genuinely, honestly said, and just I hate to bash on anybody, but man, if there's anybody that deserves it, it is absolutely Mr. Trudeau. And how desperate are they? This is a second clip that I mentioned from Brian Lilly. It's interesting because I think he's kind of, actually, for being a mainstream guy, he's kind of still helping pull things back towards the right with reasonable statements. He's kind of navigating the razor's edge rather well. And what he's calling out here, I think, is brilliant, because uh, this is a real issue. Our government has this fascination with death, and particularly the death of children. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of those things when we get a little further into the genocide story.
Justin Trudeau's Liberals are desperate, so they once again turn towards the topic of abortion. Hi, I'm Brian Lilly, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. There was an odd incident that happened on Tuesday. Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, she's supposed to be giving an update on the state of the Canadian economy, when she suddenly turned to Toronto Centre MP and Minister for Women's and Gender Equality, Marcy Ian, and turned and had her talk about an issue that has nothing to do with the economy, at least not the way most people view it. Marcy Ian introduced the fact that the government was going to bring in a Ways and Means motion on the topic of abortion. Ways and Means motion is normally a tax measure. It is something that you bring in to, say, change the capital gains tax inclusion rate. That's something the government's trying to do right now, but can't do because they're in the middle of dealing with the fact that, well, the Green Slush Fund is the only thing that MPs have been debating since October 2nd. But Marcy Ian said that the government will bring in a Ways and Means motion that will take away the charitable tax status of any group that is running a crisis pregnancy center. They say this is about access to abortion. No, it's not. It's about shutting down anyone that they believe has a different viewpoint than they do on the issue of abortion. And they tried to tie it into the economy. Look, every time the Trudeau Liberals are desperate, they latch onto the issue of abortion. Abortion is completely legal in Canada. In fact, it has far fewer restrictions than most of our peer countries. There are no restrictions on abortion in Canada. It's legal right up until the time the baby is actually born. That's not something that you could do in France, in Britain, in Italy, in Germany, in most of the United States. Well, okay, forget the United States. We know Roe v. Wade and all the arguments going on down there. Look at our other peer countries, and they all have restrictions. Canada has none. And
Canada has
sectors
none.
that...
You hear that? Canada has none. It's a baby butchering government, and this demand to normalize the butchering of the most vulnerable is, and normalizing of that as healthcare, is the most diabolical evil that that is imaginable and fathomable. And this has got to stop. This is a part of the attack of the genocide on our country, is the death of babies. Meanwhile, they're saying, oh, the birth rate declining. The birth butchery is escalating. They're not being allowed to be born. This is just so absurd to me. And meanwhile, bragging about being number one, like Marianne says, in selling baby parts. And this is what bothers me most, and nobody's talking about it in the U.S. election, was that Kamala Harris protected Planned Parenthood when they got caught busted selling illegal black market baby parts, and instead prosecuted the two journalists that blew the whistle on this kind of thing. So this is a long entrenched war against our society in order to justify we need more immigrants, we need more immigrants, we need more immigrants, we need more immigrants. This is planned. This is the depopulation of our nations. This is a planned genocide upon us by our own ruling establishment. And so this hypocrisy of everybody involved in this that doesn't have the guts to call it what it is butchering our natural born so that they can be replaced with foreigners. It's the most heinous evil imaginable.
Try and say to women who aren't sure, hey, we'll give you support, we'll give you hope, we'll give you other options. The Trudeau Liberals want to shut them down. Now, why is it important that this is a Ways and Means motion? Well, by definition, a Ways and Means motion is a confidence vote, which means that if the Poilievre Conservatives vote for the motion, they're voting confidence in the Trudeau government. If they vote against it, then they're holding their same position. They don't have confidence in the Trudeau government, but voting against it gives the Trudeau Liberals the ability to say, aha, see, they want to take away your abortion rights. First off, there's no abortion rights in Canada. That's never been ruled on by the Constitution. It's not in the Constitution. It's never been ruled on by the Supreme Court. That is an American import, but that's beside the point. What they are doing is playing with a very serious issue in a very politicized manner, all to try and save their own skin. This is despicable, partisan, wedge politics, but it's all the Trudeau Liberals have left. So yes, they're going forward on this issue. They're trying to shut down crisis pregnancy centers by saying this limits a woman's right to choose. They may offer a different view than we do. That shouldn't happen. And if you vote against it, you're voting against access to abortion. It's not about access. It's about politics. Partisan wedge politics from a government that is out of ideas, out of gas, out of time, and just the voters are fed up with them. This is what they've come to.
And I agree. And this is strange, and I want to remind people that just because I use a clip or something from somebody, or I retweet them, I repost that some of their stuff or share, a retweet or a share is not an endorsement. There are so very, very few that I actually trust, but I will give them merit for the things that they say in the moment when it is important for people to be informed. And the last little while, Brian has been saying some better things than anybody else. And yeah, the devil's got, and not only that, he's not just using the devil's checkerboard. The devil has our paychecks, right? It's all part. For those of you guys that have been around for a few years ago, when I talked about the manufactured destabilization, I talked about the food supply shortages. We talked about all of this for years now, and now we're at the death part, right? And our government is in basically full satanic mode. So this is the atheists among us, when they attack us or don't stand up for Christian values, let 130 churches burn without any outrage, and shame on me if I have some outrage. Shame on me. I had somebody try to shame me yesterday on X because I called out Jagmeet Singh on butchering babies in Canada. And for that, I got called out because shame on me, I should be calling out the butchering of babies in Palestine. This is kind of where we've gotten to as a society, and our government is absolutely disgustingly desperate. And like I say, I think we're kind of narrowing it down to why he is clinging to things. But this is some unseen footage, I thought, that was necessary to put out there in the public scope and purview. So this is from in 2019, the Macdonald-Laurier Institute predicted surgically how China's interference in Canadian politics would unfold today. Poof. Justin Trudeau was briefed by CSIS every year since 2019 from MSM, and he's been lying to everyone ever since. He just testified in a hearing and blatantly lied under oath, right?
Information given to me on the funding of federal candidates by China.
Canada's spy agency is warning that China's attempts to manipulate the media are becoming the new normal. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service raised that issue in a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau earlier this year, and there are renewed calls now for a much tougher approach to foreign interference.
Trudeau did not address reporting by Global News that sources say a clandestine election interference network was covertly funded by Chinese state entities in the 2019 federal election, and that the Prime Minister was briefed in 2022 by Canadian intelligence officials on these stunning allegations of political interference schemes. Canada's chief electoral officer says he's not aware of Beijing interfering beyond Global News reports.
I've not received any reports regarding specific instances of non-compliance with the legislation or specific instances of Chinese interference in the election.
MLI Senior Fellow J. Michael Cole warns that Ottawa also needs to contend with the possibility of interference by Beijing. The Chinese regime has every reason to regard the upcoming elections as an opportunity and to engineer the election of a future government that is more to its liking. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has a variety of tools at its disposal, honed by experience in other jurisdictions such as Taiwan. For example, it could escalate its economic warfare against Canada by targeting sectors of the economy and export-reliant parts of the country with the aim of alienating those ridings from the current government.
I woke up to an explosive report in the Globe and Mail this morning reporting that CSIS documents viewed by the newspaper reveal China's strategy to influence the 2021 election. Beijing wanted the Liberals to be elected, but only to a minority mandate. And according to the documents, China viewed the Conservatives as too harsh on China and used disinformation campaigns against them. Alleged Chinese government election interference is rattling Canadian politics. A string of media reports based on leaked intelligence reveals both the 2019 and 2021 elections were targeted. Senior government officials are adamant the integrity of those elections were not compromised. The allegations, though, are alarming. And my next guest says they're just the tip of the iceberg. Chuck Kwan is co-chair of the Toronto Association for Democracy in China. He joins us now from Toronto. Mr. Kwan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about how Beijing runs foreign interference operations in Canada?
Well, it all started about 34 years ago after Tiananmen Square massacre, when Beijing was eager to burnish its image internationally. And they have started setting up what I would call proxy organizations. And through these organizations and through their proxies, Beijing has been able to exert very soft influence in many ways, in many levels of our government.
Is that the primary focus, or do these operations primarily target Chinese Canadians?
No, they are targeted at Canadian society at large.
How concerned are you about
the
how
whole
the government
Canadian
hasn't
society
done enough, or do you believe the government hasn't done enough?
And we can go from website and see who's who and who's meeting whom, and that includes a lot of Canadian politicians and government officials being wine and dined.
So help me understand this, because the allegation right now, the headline story right now, certainly in the Globe and Mail, was that China wanted to help elect Liberals to get a Liberal minority government, and they wanted to defeat Conservatives who they believed had policies that were unfavorable to China. In your experience of monitoring this, is it that starkly partisan? Is China, in your view, interested in electing Liberals at the expense of Conservatives?
They understand that perhaps from the Harper days, the Conservatives are a little bit tougher on them than the Liberals would. And that's why in the last 10, 12 years, they have been pretty much putting the money on the Liberals. Certainly, they are the beneficiary of the Chinese operation.
Given the large number of accredited Chinese diplomats in Canada, we can assume Beijing has thoroughly studied potential vulnerabilities. Likewise, Candidates who hew closer to Beijing's line might be promised greater Chinese investment in their ridings. Additionally, the Communist Party of China may rely on its various proxies in the business community, political donors, captured elites in academia, think tanks, and retired government officials, as well as communities with large concentrations of ethnic Chinese, to undermine the electoral prospects of politicians seeking election.
Separate sources with knowledge of the 2022 intelligence briefs told Global News funds from the Chinese consulate in Toronto, allegedly facilitated by a Toronto businessman, Wei Cheng-yi, totaling some $250,000, was transferred first to an unnamed Ontario MPP and a federal candidate staff member. Wei Cheng-yi denies the allegations. From there, sources say the money was distributed to members of a clandestine network. Intelligence says the network was comprised of at least 11 federal candidates, along with 13 campaign staffers.
The Communist Party of China also enjoys near total control of Chinese language media in Canada. Adding to the rampant disinformation being circulated on social media apps, the regime has perfected the practice of discrediting politicians over many years in Taiwan and Hong Kong. And the CCP's content farms are known to spread dis and misinformation, cause confusion, and embattle a targeted government by forcing it to dedicate large amounts of resources to debunking false claims.
Canada's spy agency is warning that China's attempts to manipulate the media are becoming the new normal. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service raised that issue in a meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau earlier this year, and there are renewed calls now for a much tougher approach to foreign interference. Catherine Tunney reports.
Foreign interference is becoming more sophisticated, frequent, and insidious. That's a warning the head of Canada's spy agency gave to the Prime Minister during a meeting earlier this year. According to briefing docs prepped ahead of that meeting, CSIS warned the Prime Minister that foreign states were trying to influence media to get their message out. In particular, the People's Republic of China's media influence activities in Canada have become normalized. Chinese language media outlets operating in Canada and members of the Chinese Canadian community are primary targets of PRC-directed foreign influenced activities.
Cyber attacks against political parties, local governments, Election Canada websites, and other critical sectors can also be used as a means to interfere with election and, as with disinformation, erode public confidence in the integrity of an election. And we cannot rule out the possibility that the Communist Party of China will seek to buy outright certain candidates with promises of money or lucrative deals at some point in the future. Finally, in the case of the Liberal Party, former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's recent proposal to visit Beijing and negotiate a deal with Communist Party officials, an idea that would ensure the future capture of Canadian nationals whenever Beijing entered into a dispute with Ottawa, illustrates the potential for a serious split within the party, which could be exploited by Beijing. Every effort must be made by our intelligence and law enforcement agencies, by the judiciary, and by other government agencies to track suspected foreign interference and implement appropriate defensive measures.
So we have had ample time to have an honest discussion, which I think people are not prepared to have. It is also why people are resisting a foreign agent registry because of the number of Canadian elites that would get ensnarled in such a registry. These are very serious matters in a parliamentary democracy, and there are many options available to the government today if it wants to show that it is serious about defending Canadian democracy. We need to decide, are we standing with the tyrants or are we standing up for Canadian democracy?
There has never been any information given to me on the funding of federal candidates by China.
What a lying sack of excrement. Like in that last guy, he said it best. There is all kinds of tools to fortify and defend us from this crap, but it is being leveraged away by the captured government. And which brings me to the next story, which is more of said government infiltration and capture of policy by these penetrated members of the cabinet that have sold their souls to the globalist Reich. But this is a deep dive that Naya did on Bill C-65. Sorry, guys. I know you needed more bills to remember and juggle, right, in your brains. I know you needed that all so much, right? So this is one that you may or may not have heard of, Bill C-65. And she starts with, are we naive? Bill C-65 changes to Canada's elections. Okay, here we go again. In every election where the Liberal Party were expected to win and or had help from China, the election rules were perfectly acceptable. If it looked good for them, they left it alone. Now that they're expecting to lose, the election rules must be changed. Apparently so, because we have Bill C-65. So the sponsor of the bill this is an introduction into this bill. It's really going to shock you, right? The sponsor of the bill is one of the most corrupt politicians in Ottawa and is essentially a direct conduit to the Prime Minister. Remember, Dominic LeBlanc appointed his own family to be ethics commissioner and thought nothing of it. So I guess we know who's running lead, who's the quarterback of the election transition into more favorable Liberal results, right? Dominic LeBlanc, gotta love that guy, or something. The new election bill is 76 pages long. That's an awful lot of gobbledygook, right? They want to start using electronic voting machines just like BC did, and they want to provide the chief electoral officer the ability to make modifications without quantifying what that means, without defining what that means, basically. So they can make changes, whatever they need to, and they'll have the ability to do so. So who is this said anointed person with the authority, this chief electoral officer? A Liberal who worked in the Privy Council office and taught in the University of Montreal and McGill, where Justin Trudeau was a student. Stéphane Poirot was appointed chief electoral officer in June of 2018. So there we go. Who's the who's who on that? So I love this piece. She's bringing the receipts on exactly looking at the framework of this bill, right? So this is the elections bill that changes the election date 1 week to allow Jagmeet to gain his lifetime pension. Of course, Trudeau said it's because he didn't want the election to interfere with his son's birthday. Remember that, right? The bill allows a person to vote without proof of residency as long as a person of residency vouches for the person without residency. Red flag much? Exactly. What could go wrong, right? The Liberal Party bill quantifies that foreign interference must include a receipt of money spent to influence voters. Changing the rules on what foreign influence is. Making sure that if without money, it's not influence, right? Okay, gotcha. Threatening to kill their family in Beijing seems perfectly acceptable. Right. Typical Liberal changing of the moral and compass, and now they're trying to make changes in the election compass, right? The Liberal Party is opening up foreign interference by allowing groups to use non-Canadian funds to advertise and try to influence an election. This is an insane change. Absolutely. So bring on more Chinese yen for advertising on our already captured legacy media. Right. So the Liberal Party election bill says that a Canadian individual is allowed to advertise and spend money to influence voters. Anyone is a Canadian individual who qualifies as permanent resident according to Immigration Act. Right. So anybody that's here already. So what does the Immigration Act say about who is a permanent resident? They are not Canadian citizens, but are basically almost anyone and everyone in Canada. The Liberal government is purposely leaving a massive hole for foreign interference to drive through. To show its commitment to preventing foreign interference, the Liberal Party is assessing maximum fines for breaking rules at $1,500 for an individual and $5,000 for a corporation. India and China are scared. I'm sure they are, right? They're gonna get a fine. If they spend $1 million, they're gonna get a $1,500 fine. Oh, if they do it under their own name, so do it under the corporation, and it'll cost them $5,000 they can use as a tax write-off, right? The bill does very little, if anything, to prevent or deter foreign interference. In fact, I argue it makes it easier. A couple of big things I didn't touch on: the government wants to make future elections 3 days long and persecute, censor, hate, and deniers. So if you deny or question election results, they're going to start treating you as a criminal here in Canada. So that's kind of all part and parcel. So now we've looked at, again, a whole succession of steps that take us to what Neil Oliver and I agree upon this term that is the only appropriate terminology to use anymore. And we've heard others say it, but it's genocide. And so taking a look at what Wikipedia and by the law book, it's the same definition. Genocide is violent is violence that targets individuals because of their membership of a group and aims at the destruction of a people. So targeted murder, in short, that's what genocide is. And the long list of people that Trudeau intended to replace includes most of us. So I got this clip here, 14 minutes. We all love Neil. I know it's like he's singing too, but this particular clip was brilliant, and I wanted to share it all with you guys, and we'll talk about it in just a few minutes. So, they scream declining birth rates, declining population. We scream and need more information or more immigration, illegal of any kind. Make it bend the rules, change the rules, change the laws to support what they're already doing. Bill C-65. And once they get Bill C-293 and Bill C-63, we won't even be able to question any of these other bills like C-65. This is what Trudeau is hanging on for, is this mass level of controls to carry on the genocide. And we're going to hear from Neil on his thoughts on genocide. And remember, this is why we do this together, because we're all going to end up in the same graveyards together if we don't stop these swamp zombies in this coup of all of our nations, but for me particularly Canada.
When the history books about this decade of the 21st century are written, genocide will feature again and again and again. By which I mean the deliberate destruction of people. Because that's what genocide is. You call it anti-human if you like, I regularly do. But a toxic rose by any other name, I would say already there can be no doubting the intention to cut our numbers, to move towards a future inhabited by fewer of the likes of us. Whatever other objectives are out there being pursued by the powerful, the reduction of the human population is to the fore. I don't know what other word to use to describe that. Not if you want to tell the truth. It's no secret, the desire, the intention for the fewer of us. It's not disguised at all. Human beings, especially but not only the populations of the developed West, have clearly been identified not as the be-all and end-all of creation, which was the way humanity used to be looked upon, but rather as a problem to be solved. Agenda 2030, the United Nations Pact for the Future, the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty and its attendant international health regulations, all of it envisions a world of fewer people making less use of the resources of the world. Agenda 2030 might see, in due course, to the cutting of the global population by as much as a half. Those that remain will certainly live lesser lives than before. That we, the people, are the problem, are perceived as the problem, is nowhere made more plain to see than in relation to the most basic elements of life. For starters, birth rates are in decline all around the world. So few babies being born, especially to the populations of notionally developed countries, that the indigenous populations there will die out in the century ahead. They will be no more. Human fertility itself is in retreat. There's a complex cocktail out there, a combination of physical, physiological, sociological, and psychological factors. Another essential for life is energy. Energy for heat and cooking at the simplest human level, but also for industry, for the production of those things that have made and make possible better, longer lives. But Agenda 2030 is taking energy away, outlawing access to and use of the abundant, efficient, affordable sources of energy our species has exploited since time out of mind. Oil, gas, coal, cast into the dustbin of history. Not in the productive countries of the world, of course, not in China, not in Russia, not in India, and throughout Asia, but here in the West. Here in the West, where the sun is truly setting. The ancestors burned wood, but the likes of Bill Gates, to name but one of his ilk, him and the rest of his like-minded philanthropaths, would like to see trees cut down and buried. To cut down on CO2 and save the planet. Cutting down trees and burying them. Trees that are the planet's oldest solution to the challenge of capturing carbon. But perhaps most pernicious of all when it comes to the blatant intention of the malevolent powerful to see to our undoing, well, it's about their intentions for our food. I worry about fertility and energy. Those have implications for me, but certainly mine, my children, God willing, grandchildren in the years ahead. But it's access to food that tends to focus my fears approximately 3 times a day, every day. And this week I'm seeing headlines and listening to coverage of a renewed determination here in Britain by those who most assuredly.
The 2 basic necessities for any society to thrive and prosper is an access to an abundance of food and an access to an abundance of energy. Those 2 basic needs of Canadians are the most under attack. Literally, the most under attack. And I saw a post over here that we did it to ourselves. And you know, I can't disagree with you to a point on that, Steve. You know, for 40 years of my life, I wasn't engaged. I wasn't plugged in. I didn't care either. But that's changed. I've changed, and I'm doing everything that I can to redeem those 40 years and at least fight back for the next 40. And that's, I think, what where we're at here as a society is realizing that what is really at stake, what they really are doing, what really truly is the plan. And that's what I try and do every night, is try and lead people through the plan. And, you know, until our army of good decides to get, you know, or is able to, I don't want to say decides, is able to actually do put up a meaningful resistance and stop these guys. And internationally, globally, worldwide, man, it's happening. And I know we all want it to happen faster, but the only way that's going to happen faster is to get more people into our ranks. And the only way that I can do that or take part in that is to do what we're doing here tonight, is developing community and family and networking and getting people plugged in. And I see it here in the chat. You guys are amazing. You guys are plugged in, not just here on the show, but outside in the real world too. And that is the point of why we all gather here as a community. I tell people I don't have an audience. I have a community, and I'm very proud of that. And that's you guys, right? So I'm not here to hand out warm, fuzzy blankets and hot cups of cocoa. I want to go to my grave knowing that I did everything I could do, not wonder if there was more that I could to do. So that's kind of my choice, and we're getting to a point here where people are going to be left no choice, and we want to be cognizant of where we're at in all of this, and Neil is passionately plugged in over the target when he's talking about genocide and how they're implementing it. And we do that every night. We talk about the mechanics of it, but we're kind of at the getting to the end of the runway on our ability to communicate. And there's going to be some existential events that are going to be incredibly polarizing, and people of all kinds will try to capitalize on it.
By every word and deed, do not have our best interests at heart to have us stop eating meat and dairy. They're like a dog with a bone, if you pardon the pun. I put out a tweet last night, actually, asking if Ed Miliband, Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, God help us all, is in fact the stupidest man in Britain. Just asked the question. And judging by the replies I got, he's most certainly to be regarded as in the running for the title. The UK government's own climate watchdog, an increasingly rabid dog called the Climate Change Committee, has said Britons should cut meat and dairy intake by half in the years ahead, swapping farm-grown food for the always sinister-sounding plant-based alternatives. It's easy to imagine Miliband to the fore among Britain's stupidest. It's easy to imagine he might be an enthusiastic supporter for this, the latest harebrained suggestion from the ranks of the anti-human. No doubt he won't be eating the crap himself. None of those clowns ever practice what they preach. He championed electric cars long before switching to one himself, and only when caught out on national TV, was still taking advantage of the internal combustion engine. Like the entirety of the ill-described green agenda, it's never about what they say it's about. Green energy isn't about the good of the planet. It's about subsidies and profit for the already rich, tooled up as they are to jump aboard the latest bandwagon. The switch to plant-based alternatives from meat and dairy, just more of the same. It's nothing to do with your health and all to do with the health of the bank accounts of the billionaires invested in the snake oil. Here are the ingredients in a random offering of a plant-based substitute for a chicken burger. This is on the back of the packet. Water, flour, olive oil, salt, dried yeast, antioxidant E300, sunflower oil, pre-dust, palm fruit fat, emulsifier E471, raising agent E500, color E150C, dehydrated vegetables, potato starch, spices, herbs, thickener E407A, canola oil, flavor enhancer E621, acidity regulator E331, smoke flavoring, maltodextrin, raising agent E450I and E450II, spice extract, soy protein isolate, pea protein, bamboo fiber, thickener E461, dextrose. The list goes on. Chicken burger. Shouldn't have anything in it but chicken. Those that would drive farmers off the land, they have farmed for centuries and thereby take control of food production and food distribution, have sought for years to persuade us, to propagandize us that red meat, grass-fed red meat, some of the stuff that enabled our species to grow big brains in the first place, is bad for our health and for the health of the planet. In fact, there are many credentialed physicians who say red meat is the most healing food of all, enabling the body to repair itself in real time, providing easily digested protein, all the B vitamins, particularly B12, zinc, copper, iron, essential creatine. And far from damaging the planet, as we're relentlessly told, Cattle are part of the circle of life. Of course they are. They propagate and spread plants that in turn absorb CO2 from the atmosphere and let it be trapped in the soil. The presence of grazing herds mitigates droughts and wildfires. The methane that the animals produce is recycled by the atmosphere in a few years, 10 or 12. It's all cyclical. It's all intended. It all works. We're expected to believe instead that monocrops raised at colossal scale using God knows what chemistry to maintain and boost them. And that's before we contemplate sidelines into vast aircraft hangar-sized sheds full of insects grown in the dark in readiness for our consumption. That's what we're supposed to believe in, switch to, adjust for. Industrial farming of crops would anyway require yet more deforestation, cutting down more trees. If there was a shred of authenticity in the trumpeted claims about plant food over meat, then it would be about good vegetables and other crops grown close to home and not flown halfway around the world. Schools would teach children about good food, what good food actually is. They would teach them about maintaining the soil. It all comes back to the soil. They would teach them about how to cook the resultant crops instead of opting for ultra-addictive, sugar-laden, ultra-processed rubbish ready for the microwave oven, ready for the bin, really. No one would contemplate for a moment the consumption of anything prepared with so much as a teaspoonful of seed oil, palm oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, and the rest of the industrial products, once used not for food, but for lubricating machinery. Those that would further undermine our well-being with ersatz, Frankenstein food are the same that were cheerleaders during the scamdemic for shutting down gyms and play parks, banning walks on the beach and in the hills, condemning kids to imprisonment at home, and leaving open the fast food joints. All of it's about diminishing us, making us less, until finally we disappear altogether. The medical industry isn't about making us healthy or keeping us healthy. It's about making profits by pushing the big pharma products that treat the symptoms resultant from eating the crap churned out by the ultra-processed food industry. It's true to say that in the United States of America, the single most valuable commodity is a sick child, kept ailing for a lifetime of consumption of ultra-processed food that keeps them enthralled to the medics incentivized to pump them full of this potion and that.
This part,
the legal definition of
this part kind of hit me. And if there's one thing I want you guys to get out of this tonight is this part. What he talks here about the most valuable commodity to the swamp zombies is a sick child. I think I read it today. It's what, 72 or 76 jobs for a child's back schedule now. There is nothing humane about that. That is manufacturing sick children. They're trying it everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. And it's all a part of the genocide. This is literally death by a million pokes. That's what's going on.
Genocide is the committing of acts with the intention to destroy a people. I'll read that again. The legal definition of genocide is the committing of acts with the intention to destroy a people.
You guys got that? The commission of acts with the intent to destroy a people. Can anybody look at our government, our ruling establishment, our health, wellness, military, police, law, judiciary that is not engaged in doing things or protecting those that are committing the crimes intent that are, by all available evidence, destroying a people?
There are more ways than the most obvious to destroy people. It can be done at once, or it can be done by degrees. First by destroying the soul, and then by destroying the flesh and bone. If the powers that be wanted other than our reduction and destruction, the world would be an altogether different place. The activities of the powerful would be different too. But rather than striving for accessible and affordable energy for all, rather than celebrating the human spirit, its achievements so far and its potential in the future, rather than eradicating disease by maximizing human health and well-being, we have allowed to grow around us a psychopathic class that views humanity itself as a disease awaiting a cure. If we want to avoid a crime against humanity, worse even than those already recorded by history, then the time to stand in defense of life itself is now.
It's now. It's now. It has to be now. It literally has to be. He's 100% on point with that. And I'm going to explain why. This is kind of a deep read. Bear with me. I'm going to read this out for everybody in the 4x2. I'll just read the first little bit. I've already kept us an hour and a half, and I got a few more things to get through. So, but this is by Camus. When you talk about the willful destruction of people, this is a report on Dr. Corey Perry. He says, we've never seen dying at this rate. Dr. Pierre Corey joined the Ingram Angle to discuss why the United States has seen a staggering 158,000 more deaths in 2023 compared to the same period 2019. Laura Ingram says, we've all noticed that there seems to be more tragic stories every day of young people, especially young men dropping dead, and now the FDA is warning of a catastrophic drop in U.S. life expectancy. Remember when we showed the Deagle report going back a couple of years now? I'll have to dig that up. I actually screenshotted and saved that. It disappeared shortly thereafter. It was staggering how many people they were predicting or nations to drop, but Deagle wasn't reporting on how we were going to lose 10 or 11% of our population. They just said we were going to lose 10 or 11% of our population, which amounts to a whole lot of Americans dying off suddenly and unexpectedly, per se, right? So they go into the numbers on this. I'm going to share this. It's a 5-minute clip. Maybe I'll just play it instead of reading it. It'll probably be far less painful and a little quicker. I wasn't going to do this, so this is a change of regular schedule, regular unscheduled programming. But why not? We're going to talk about genocide. Let's take a look at some hard numbers.
We've all noticed that there seems to be more tragic stories every day of young people, especially young men, dropping dead. And now the FDA is warning of a catastrophic drop in U.S. life expectancy. In the first 9 months of this year, 158,000 more Americans died unexpectedly than in all of 2019. Now, just to give you some perspective, that's more than the casualties in every war since Vietnam, all of them combined. Now, actuarial reports that young people are being disproportionately affected here. Mortality was 26% higher among insured 35 to 44-year-olds and 19% higher for 25 to 34-year-olds. This is overall COVID deaths, of course, have dropped 84% since 2021. And my next guest is sounding the alarm. President and Chief Medical Officer of the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, Dr. Pierre Corey. Dr. Corey, we got to know each other during COVID. These figures are staggering. Now, I think people see these numbers, Dr. Corey, and they might blame fentanyl or drugs or unknown heart problems, even in young athletes. People say that they're not uncommon. It's happened in years prior. So could this explain all these deaths?
No, absolutely not. I mean, if you take a close look at the numbers, and the life insurance industry, the actuaries have done this. It's the timing. Fentanyl didn't just explode on the scene in 2021. Global warming or obesity or diabetes or deaths of despair. I mean, the timing is really inarguable. I mean, we have to answer the question, why are the healthiest elements of society, these are young, employed folks with life insurance, suddenly started dying at rates we've never seen before in 2021, and it continues. And so we're left with the question, what happened in the American workplace in 2021 that led to this unprecedented rate of death? And the challenge here, Laura, is we're trying to ask the question. We wrote that op-ed trying to put that data out there. We need our government to function. Public health, one of their main objectives or responsibilities is to collect this data to inform us so that we can, enact policies. And I don't see an organized effort to trying to answer the question why young people are dying so much.
Well, and Dr. Journal of American Medical Association study cancer diagnosis between 2010 and 2019 found that certain kinds of cancer were being diagnosed more often in younger adults in the United States, and increases seem to be driven by cancers in women and adults in their 30s. So overall, early onset cancers increased over that decade by an average of 0.28% each year. And among women, it was like 0.67%. So that's 33% and 7% respectively over that time frame. So have you seen that kind of uptick firsthand?
Well, the numbers that you just quoted are dwarfed by what we're describing. I mean, we're seeing these rises, these sudden rises in traditionally healthy sectors of society. We've never seen dying at this rate. I mean, unless we send all our young people to war, you can't explain why so many young people are dying. And we need our governments to function. And here's the thing. I have a private practice. I specialize in COVID care, not only acute, but I specialize in long COVID and long vax. Long vax is the chronic illness that's triggered by the vaccine. It's way more common than long COVID. And I have thousands of patients that are decimated. Their health is disturbed. This is not the dead, right? That op-ed, we talked about the dying, but, theirs has exploded since the outset of the campaign. Why are we not asking questions? All we've seen our government do, and these agencies, is ignore it and dismiss it.
Well, just for the layman watching this and hearing about this, like with so much else that happened in the last few years, it sounds like a cover-up. And, that's why they rushed out to condemn people like you, and it was all misinformation and disinformation, and they went after me for the hydroxychloroquine. I mean, it was just never-ending assault on anyone who asked questions. But my simple question to you is, are you seeing incidents of individuals who have compromised immunity and other problems that you believe are directly related to multiple COVID-19 shots?
There's not even a question that is occurring. I mean, there's really good science to explain why that's occurring. I'm seeing it clinically in my practice. You're seeing it in these reports from around the world of these sudden, white lung syndromes, everyone's sick and entering hospitals. I mean, we're in the wake of a global mass vaccination campaign, and people are not recognizing. We've known for years that, for instance, flu vaccines increase your risk of other respiratory viruses. And now we're seeing this whole world that got vaccinated. And,
we'll have to.
It's not surprising.
Exactly, right? It's not surprising. People have not wanted to look what's staring us in the face. And this is a post from Ethical Skeptic who's been charting this. And I'm going to add this. I'm not going to decipher this chart now, but I am going to add it into the Substack for tomorrow morning, guys. The model's numbers over 3 years are 3 years ahead of mainstream realization and are now consistently showing as correct. So he's been predicting this exactly what's going to happen for years, and he's basically 100% on point. So, again, to the question of, is genocide real, and who's doing it, and how is it happening? I think we're, must accept the reality of it. And this one should have been up a few spots before this when we were talking about declining birth rates. But in the same vein, this is from Lion Advocacy. If you're not sure who he is, this is Viva Fry's brother, also a lawyer. But not a conspiracy theory. Trudeau has expended significant legislative and budgetary resources to bring down the fertility rate. So he's spending money and effort to bring down the fertility rate, and it seems to be working. In the past 10 years, Canada's fertility rate has plummeted under the Prime Minister's policies. So, according to new data from Statistics Canada, in 2023, Canada's fertility rate, the average number of children a woman births in her lifetime, fell to 1.26 from 1.33, the lowest rate ever recorded. Replacement level, which allows the population to replace itself from one generation to the next, requires a fertility rate of 2.1. So our nation is quickly becoming unsustainable by intent, by design, using taxpayer money to fund and manufacture a declining birth rate. Canada has now joined the group of the lowest low fertility countries, including South Korea, Spain, Italy, and Japan, with 1.3 children per woman or less. So, yeah, not a great start position our Prime Minister has put us in. So, we've got one final, it's about an 11-minute clip for the night, guys, and this is not an endorsement. I understand that people are leaving Canada, and I understand why. Some things to think about. I'm not suggesting that this is the solution, but for some it is, and they are considering it. And so I get this question quite often. There are a lot of people in here that have the dual passports, dual citizenships, those kinds of things. But this one was kind of an interesting piece, I thought, that would give people a place to start thinking about. I don't know this platform or this channel. This is just something that I thought people might relate to and have some questions about, and we could have some further discussions, and maybe I'll talk to some people, see what we can understand about what it's going to be like. Because, I mean, if the world goes to hell in a handbasket, are borders even going to matter? Is it going to matter where we're at? I don't think so. We can't outrun the evil. Sooner or later, the alligator will get you too. But yeah, with the world shifting the way it is, people are thinking about moving to different far-flung places. This might help them narrow it down, I guess.
Own nothing and live anywhere. Goodbye, Canada. After a full year of travel throughout North America, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, we finally returned home. Or should I say, what was home? Home was beautiful Victoria, British Columbia. You know, I don't think it really hit me until I ran into an old friend. And she asked me, so Jill, where are you guys living now? Well, geez, I honestly had to think about it because I really didn't have an answer for her. We were living everywhere and anywhere that our little hearts desired. This is the first time that I think I truly realized we were living globally. We were now living the life that we had only dreamed of. Okay. Yeah, so you do it. Roar. You know, we realize that this life is not for everyone. Lots of our friends are absolutely amazed and say, wow, that's fantastic, but we could never do that. And there is a myriad of different reasons for their feelings. And I know, I have to admit, I was one of those people. Then 2 years ago, we made the pivot and the change. It was difficult and sometimes confusing for me. But when I look back at it now, all I can say is, oh my God, I am so glad I went through with it. If you ever had any thoughts about leading this type of life, or just for a year or two, or maybe even forever, watch this video. You know, we always love hearing your comments, so please share. And don't forget to please subscribe, like, and share. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook, so please see the link below.
You're the boss. The boss now. Yeah. Okay. Good boss now. We're from Canada. Yeah.
So one of our biggest fears was with healthcare. After you leave Canada for 7 months, you no longer have healthcare. And so once we were here in Mexico, we had to get that sorted out. And so now we have private healthcare, and our healthcare has never been better. Like seriously, every year you get a wellness check. And we were in Kuala Lumpur and we had our wellness check done there. I had a pap test, I had a pelvic ultrasound, I had a mammogram, I had echocardiogram, I had a stress test, I met with a cardiologist. And if that wasn't enough, I had a hearing test, an eye test, and I met with a dietitian. And at the end of it, you end up meeting with your doctor for an hour to go over all your results. And this would have taken me probably years to achieve in Canada. So it's never been better. So another fear we had was, how much is it going to cost to travel the world? We are now living a lavish lifestyle, traveling the world for less than it costs to sit in our home 100%. In Canada, doing nothing but home maintenance. We never truly realized just how expensive it was to live in Canada until we left.
Jill is like the Pied Piper. They're all following Jill.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, living a life like this and having these experiences, it's absolutely priceless. And I think like most people, our largest expense was our home. And once we decided to give up our Canadian tax residency, we had to sell it.
When we finally decided we were going to give up our residency, we quickly learned there were a lot of hoops you have to jump through. The government of Canada doesn't really want to see you leaving. And, especially when it entails not giving them all the tax dollars we were in the past. So we knew right off the bat we had to sell our home. Some people don't. There are ways around.
When people wonder why I add the word hostages when I'm greeting people, hey, fellow hostages, that's kind of why. We're slaves to their taxation and their funding system. So we are legitimately held hostage by our nation through making us unable to travel.
I would strongly suggest talking to an accountant, if you want to hang on to real estate. But we just thought the process would be that much easier not having our home. So we unloaded it and just filed our first tax return, and we love it.
The next big obstacle was, what were we going to do with all our stuff? We weren't quite sure, but decided we were not going to be a prisoner of our possessions. I just love the saying, if you own something you cannot give away, then you don't own it. It owns you. This saying has made such an impact on our lives. We have to admit, this was not easy at first. It seemed like a daunting task, but after we got started, it became such a freeing process. Between our kids and some of the wonderful charitable organizations, it was soon all gone. So our initial plans were to buy a home in Cabo San Lucas. When we arrived in Mexico, we started looking for a home. And then we asked ourselves, why?
The first time I went to Mexico, I decided I was moving there too. Coincidentally, it was Cabo San Lucas.
We are so free now. Why tie ourselves down to another new home? Let's go and see the world. So many people put off traveling, and then boom, one day it's too late. We decided to do it while we were still healthy and we had our fitness. To truly travel and see some of the really special out-of-the-way places, you need both. And everyone we meet along the way, well, they keep us young. Another big deal breaker for a lot of people is we don't want to leave the kids. We are in constant contact with our kids on a daily basis. And as for personal quality time, when they are free from their busy lives, we fly them to come and join us, no matter where we are. For example, our youngest son just spent a full month with us on Boracay in the Philippines. Just that one trip alone, we spent more quality time with him than when we did in the previous year, when we were only living 6 blocks away from him.
A lot of our friends ask us, why are you doing this? The reasons are numerous. Some of the main ones are, firstly, Canada is definitely not what it used to be. We're optimistic things will change, but right now we have discovered so many new places we would rather be living. As we mentioned before, we are actually saving money living this free lifestyle. We have never felt more empowered than we do now, knowing we can be wherever we want, whenever we want. When we started this process, we felt totally overwhelmed. We took it one step at a time, though. And as we plodded along, things just became easier. And here we are now, at the end of the pathway to true organic freedom. The key is stay committed. If we can do it, so can you. So stay tuned for our upcoming video. We're going to go into detail on giving up as well as obtaining your new residency. We will also discuss tax advantages as well as medical insurance. And we have some great contacts and tips for you as well. One of the prerequisites of getting your non-residency is to achieve residency somewhere else. You can't just be a resident nowhere. And we decided we were going to go for Mexican permanent residency. And a lot of questions came up and we weren't exactly sure how to do it. And sometimes things are difficult down in Mexico. And we met this wonderful lady who's our business agent. And in our next upcoming video, we're going to introduce her. And she's going to discuss some ways to achieve your residency down here. I've got to tell you, she made the process so much easier. We talked to other people in the immigration, and they were struggling big time. But with her, it was great. Looking back on it now, we both agree. This is the best move we have ever made.
So we really hope you like this film, and don't forget to please subscribe, like, and share.
Okay, now I know this is a bit of a different flavor from what y'all are used to here, but I didn't want to be stuck in the horror show and the daily grind. So, but I wanted this kind of resonated with me. And so I'm going to start back here with a couple of these comments and digest some of this. You guys have some great comments there and thoughts on that, and tell a little story. So I did mention that my first time in Mexico was in Cabo, and I wanted to live there. Well, that kind of started my gallivanting, globetrotting adventures and experiences, and I ended up visiting several different places in Mexico. I bought land in continental Mexico at one point, with the same intentions as these folks. Traveled to several other different countries, and ultimately I ended up coming back here and staying, because this was for me the place where I had to stand, stay, and fight. So for me, that changing point was in 2019 in the convoy there. And I know a lot of other people that have had more ability to travel and fight more here in Canada. Susan Stanfield is a great example of that. She left the country and she's been able to do more in Canada having left the country. But this is the time where people we're going to be having great upheaval, and people are going to be moving. And I have to like Tiana says, her country, when she came to Canada, it was to flee horrible shit. And now she's fleeing that same horrible shit, leaving Canada. So I understand it. I get it. My family came to Canada to flee horrible shit. And I kind of always decided that I was going to be kind of the last one out. And that kind of goes back to my firefighting days, first one in, last one out kind of thing, make sure everybody goes home. But there's all different ways to do it. And I didn't want I wanted people to at least have a place where they could take a look, and it's, I get it. It can give you some tips, want to keep her, but that's kind of why I wanted to play the video here, is to give people a place where they could start doing a little research and digging while they can, if they want to consider something like that. And there's other dual passports. I think the fruitful investor is what he talks about all the time. It's in your best interest. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why we deal with Bryce is for movement of assets and money from intercontinentally around the world. They're the ones that are best able to do that and help people. I decided to stay and fight. I only have one country, one homeland in my eyes. So yeah, that's me too. So when a little personal story, they called it a B budget bomb, but there was a movie once upon a time, and there was a line in it where a guy's watching he's with his father when his father passes, and this is set in Crusader Jerusalem times. And his father, as he's dying, says to his son, "When the king is no more, go to the people and serve the people." So that line really struck me right to my core. I'm an incredibly nostalgic history nerd and buff. So that was kind of where I decided when I walked away, because I made a living with my own design agency, and I was living that lifestyle of these people that you just saw, and it didn't take a huge amount of money. It just took being smart, and I was spending most of my time living outside of the country, but I decided to stay and scrap my 10, 15 year, 20 years almost of effort in being self-employed, and walked away from all of that and decided to launch What's Up Canada. And life is definitely different. So it's an option. I mean, this isn't the end of the world. Things are going to get absolutely insane. Insanity is unsustainable, and countries rise and fall and collapse as dynasties and empires do all of the time. And unfortunately, we're in a situation where people are going to be making decisions to leave Canada, and I cannot say I blame them. War. Not everybody is wired for war, and there are a reason that people that are wired for war fight the war, because they inherently understand that very fact. Not everybody is wired for war. And the old saying is, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, right? And I firmly believe that, and that's why I do what I do. It's my calling. 100%, Steve. Government makes you do war. They made me. Literally, our government made me. I put away my agency and took up the mantle of fighting for our people when Ralph Goodall called us brown shirts for objecting to the mass migration compact. That was the day. That was the day that I turned, because in my ears, being the Canadian that I am, I heard my leadership, my government accusing me of being a Nazi, when I knew full well through the study of what our government has hidden. I was like, nope, that's not going to sit. And I fired all of my clients that I had in my agency. Sorry about that, folks. I owe a bunch of them probably some apologies. I learned along the way. It was a very emotional, earth-moving, life-altering, earth-shattering and shaking time for me. But here we are 5.5 or 6 years later, and we've been through some times, haven't we, folks? We've been through some times. So here we are. Another 2-hour show that was, I try and put stuff together in every day, and it's like, do I have enough to cover an hour? This is good. And then, the last couple of hours of the afternoon, it's, I got to add this, got to add this, got to add this. So yeah, always evolving, always more to go on. But I hope we gave a reasonable insight into people not feeling like they're crazy. And I think it's important for us to use correct terminology now more than ever. Words matter. We're held to account on the words that we use. We're soon, because of the words that they are using, and we are not, using the appropriate terminology always, leaves us at the disadvantage in the arena that we don't get to pick. So the words matter, and I think genocide is appropriate. All of these things that we are experiencing, all of these bills, C-63, C293. Those ones are we're well versed on for a reason. These are critical parts to the genocide befalling Canada. These are the same motivators and drivers that drive Neil over in Ireland and the UK, because they have the same oppression, the same that will result in the same genocide and the destruction of our society and our people. Just because the Irish have a different accent doesn't mean that we are any less unique, and we are still being destroyed by the same evil dark forces. And this is where I hope that I was able to put together enough cohesive information and material. I know it's an overdose. I blow your brains up with so much information, but it's important that we are able to connect the dots. So when you're having discussions with people, when I assemble these in their Substack form the next day, it's with purpose, and you guys can use these to explain what you've come to learn and know, because it's not easy to have an encyclopedia in your brains, right? But that's the idea of getting it down onto paper in print form. That's why I love Substack. It's a great backup for that, and what we do here every single day as prisoners, patriots, and hostages, right? So I love you guys all. One point that I wanted to mention when they were talking about the poisoning of the food and all of that, for my American followers and friends and family down there, if you're not plugged in to Patriot Switch, where you can get the best beef available in America, you are missing out, and it's not going to cost you any more than it does anywhere else. Unfortunately, Trudeau won't let us have that up here. But everything else that we have in Patriot Switch as an alternative to the BlackRock companies that you own every aisle in your damn stores. Every product that we have in our direct to consumer co-op is non-toxic, made here in North America, and non-toxic, because I will not endorse or work with anybody that's using anything to poison my people, right? This, for an extra 50 cents for something that's not going to Jeff Bezos or BlackRock, hell, I'm in, and it's not poisoning me, right? So this is why Patriot Switch is so important to me, guys, and I don't think everybody really understands what it is, and what we are doing together to fight the cabal that's trying to kill us all and commit this genocide. So give us a try. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out, but do it now while we can organize our communities, right? This is there you go. Exactly. I would never go back to any of the stuff, and it's all a part of my life, from my coffee to my my Gatorade replacement, my my food, my vitamins, my personal care stuff. So yeah, that's why we do what we do over there too. So we got a good community, people, and that's all of us. So I love you guys all. Stay mighty. Get plugged in on Substack. It's free. You can help keep it free for everybody. Get plugged in on Scrap C293. Get in the fight. Just get in the fight. Whatever you can do, get in the fight. If you need to reach out, contact at whatsupcanada.org, and I will find you, catch up to your email at some point, and support your independent journalism. Support the people that are fighting the fight that others cannot. And the best way to help out and keep this free and keep me in the fight is donate at whatsupcanada.org. That's I mean, there's Substack is great, but they take a cut. this goes directly to us to keep us going in the fight. If you find enough value to support this platform, and if you're able, and if you're not, if you're able to at least give us a thumbs up if you're watching on Rumble. Let's see, what do we got here on Rumble tonight? 44. Awesome stuff. Thanks, guys. That helps us in ways that you can't attach a value to, and the shares and the likes as well. So on that note, I love you guys all. Stay mighty. We will see you same time, same place tomorrow. All right. Bye for now.